The airport lights were harsh and cold, making every flaw on my face feel exposed. I stood in line, clutching the strap of my cheap backpack like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. It was the first time in years my parents had let me come along on a trip, and even then, I suspected something was off. Ryan strutted ahead of me with his expensive carry-on, laughing with my parents about the five-star hotel waiting overseas. He had a new passport cover gold leather, initials engraved a gift from them. Mine was the same battered blue one I'd been renewing on my own since I was old enough to fill the forms myself. When we reached the counter, my father slapped Ryan's documents down with pride. "First passenger, first son," he announced. My mother echoed, "The one who matters." The attendant smiled politely, processed it, and handed Ryan his ticket. "Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." Then it was my turn. I slid my passport forward with shaking hands. To "Just need my ticket too." My dad's hand shot out, slamming against my wrist so hard the passport slipped. He picked it up, waved it in front of me, and smirked. "Ticket? What ticket?" "Dad, you said we were all going," I whispered, heat flooding my cheeks as people in line turned to look. "You don't deserve a ticket," he spat, his voice rising. "You barely deserve a roof, and you think you deserve the world?" He turned, shoved the passport into Ryan's hands instead. "He deserves the world. You deserve the floor." My mother's laugh was shrill, cutting into my chest. "Maybe she can mop it while we're gone." I felt my throat burn. "Please, you can't just leave me here." Before I could finish, his fist cracked across my face. The sound echoed against the tiled walls, so sharp that even the attendant gasped. Pain exploded through my jaw, white-hot, blinding. My knees buckled and I fell against the cold floor tiles, tasting iron. Gasps rippled through the line. A little boy clutched his mother's hand, staring at me with wide eyes. Two businessmen whispered to each other, shaking their heads. A guard looked over but hesitated, as if unsure whether to intervene. My mom leaned down, her perfume choking me as much as her words. She whispered, low enough only I could hear, "Now the whole airport sees what we've always known. You're nothing but baggage we never wanted." Ryan smirked above me, boarding pass in hand, polished shoes stopping just short of my ribs. "Enjoy watching us take off," he sneered. And then, just like that, they walked away. They left me there, jaw aching, eyes burning, body curled on the airport floor while strangers pretended not to care. I should have stayed down. I should have cried like they wanted. But in that exact moment, as the sound of rolling suitcases and boarding announcements blurred around me, something inside me hardened. I swore with every ounce of humiliation they carved into me that the next time we crossed paths in this airport, it wouldn't be me on the floor. It would be them. I sat on the airport floor long after they had disappeared into security. People stepped around me, eyes sliding past like I was nothing more than a broken suitcase left behind. A janitor pushed a mop near my feet and muttered, "Move, girl," like I was dirt in his way. I staggered up, my jaw throbbing every time I tried to close it. I limped to the restroom, avoiding the mirrors, but when I finally looked, I almost didn't recognize the face staring back. My jaw was swollen, a bruise blooming along my cheekbone, my eyes red from trying not to cry. I touched the tender spot and flinched, then laughed bitterly. My father's words echoed in my head, "You deserve the floor," and my mother's venom whispered right after, "Baggage we never wanted." They thought they'd broken me, and maybe in that moment, I was broken. But when I stepped back into the terminal, still reeling, I noticed how people kept staring not with pity but with disgust. It was the same look I'd grown up with. Teachers who saw me bruised but called me clumsy. Relatives who invited Ryan to sit at the table while I carried plates in the kitchen. Neighbors who pretended not to hear my parents screaming at me through the walls. I realized then it wasn't just about the airport. It was my whole life. They'd trained me to believe I was nothing. And this trip, this public beating, it was just their final stamp to prove it. But as I stood there, jaw throbbing, the boarding announcement for their flight blaring over the loudspeakers, something shifted. My humiliation turned into clarity. They wanted me on the floor. so I would stand taller than I ever had. They wanted me silent, so I would learn to speak in ways they couldn't ignore. And they wanted me to vanish, so I would come back stronger than the storm that terrified them. I didn't go home that day. Instead, I wandered the airport like a ghost. Hours passed. I sat on the floor by baggage claim, staring at strangers' happy reunions. Families hugging, children squealing, couples kissing. My chest burned every time I saw a father lift his daughter with pride. My father had left me bruised and breathless on linoleum. By nightfall, when the terminal emptied, I finally left. The bus ride back to the city felt endless. My jaw ached with every bump in the road, but the pain became something else fuel. When I reached my apartment, I stood in front of the cracked mirror and whispered, "If they want a floor, I'll build one beneath them, and I'll make sure they fall through it." The next few weeks were a blur of quiet burning focus. I worked extra shifts at the diner, saved every tip, every crumpled bill. My coworkers noticed the bruises, but I brushed off their questions. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted power. I signed up for self-defense classes under the cover of night. Every time I threw a punch at the padded bag, I pictured my father's smirk. Every time I blocked a strike, I imagined my mother's sneer. And when my body shook with exhaustion, I forced myself to go again because I remembered what it felt like to be helpless on that airport floor, surrounded by strangers' indifference. I swore never again. But physical strength wasn't enough. I started studying my family. I knew their routines, their habits. Ryan bragged constantly on social media. New clothes, new trips, new achievements that were nothing more than gifts from my parents. He loved showing off, and my parents loved feeding that hunger. Every post was a breadcrumb. I traced their travel patterns, their favorite airport lounges, their obsession with status and appearances. They thought the world saw them as glamorous, successful. They had no idea that I was watching from the shadows, noting every weakness. Sometimes, late at night, doubt crept in. What if I was too small to take them down? What if humiliation was all I'd ever know? But then I'd touched the scar of my swollen jaw. Remember the way the little boy at the airport had stared at me like I was a cautionary tale, and the doubt would evaporate. I wasn't going to be the family embarrassment anymore. I was going to be the storm that swallowed their arrogance whole. One night, sitting at the diner counter after closing, I drew it out on a napkin. Not revenge born of rage alone, but of precision. I didn't want to just hurt them. I wanted to dismantle everything they built on my back, brick by brick, until they were standing in the ruins. And my first strike? It would happen in the exact place they broke me. The airport. They thought they left me there for dead. They had no idea that was where I was reborn. The day came months later, and I was ready. Not with cameras, not with paperwork, not with some polite confrontation. I was ready with a plan that would slice into them the same way their cruelty had carved into me. Ryan was bragging again, a family trip to Miami, courtesy of Mom and Dad. First-class tickets, 5-star hotel, champagne dinners. He plastered every detail across social media like a neon sign. And just like that, I knew where to strike. I had spent months working at the airport diner on overnight shifts, quietly blending in, watching. I learned the staff schedules, the security weak points, even which gate agents cut corners when they were tired. My tips bought me favors, a free coffee here, a shared smoke break there, and soon enough, I wasn't just another invisible worker. I was someone who knew things. The morning of their flight, I was waiting. They strutted through the terminal, Dad in his leather jacket, Mom clutching her designer purse, Ryan rolling a suitcase bigger than his future. My heart thudded, but I stayed calm. When they reached the counter, the agent scanned their passports. That's when the first crack appeared.
"Sir, your passport seems to have a flag on it."
Dad frowned. "What do you mean? Run it again." The agent did. Same result. "I'll need to call this in." Mom immediately snapped. "Do you know who we are? We're Priority Elite members." Her voice carried across the terminal, sharp and haughty. People turned to look. That was the first taste of humiliation, the very thing they had fed my whole life. What they didn't know was that I'd made sure of this. With every scrap of knowledge I'd picked up from working behind counters, every trick of timing I'd mastered, I orchestrated the red flag that now clung to their names. Not fraud, not crime, just enough to grind them into suspicion and inconvenience, the kind that sticks. Ryan shifted nervously, his entitled smirk cracking. "Mom, Dad, what's happening?" I watched from the cafe nearby, my hat pulled low, apron on, just another worker wiping down tables. Inside, I was shaking, not with fear, but with satisfaction. Security arrived, polite but firm. "Sir, ma'am, you'll need to come with us." Dad's face turned red. "This is absurd! We're not criminals!" But the louder he got, the more the crowd stared. Phones came out recording. The same kind of strangers who once walked past me when I was broken on the floor now raised their cameras to capture his tantrum. For the first time, it wasn't me on display. It was him. They were escorted away, sputtering, snapping at each other. Their bags were dragged behind them. And Ryan? He looked around, pale, realizing the trip he had boasted about might not even happen. I could have stopped there. That moment alone was sweet, watching their power stripped, their superiority shredded under fluorescent lights. But no, they needed to feel the floor. I slipped into the restroom, pulled off my apron, and changed into the clean clothes I had hidden in my backpack. When I emerged, I didn't look like a tired diner worker anymore. I looked sharp, composed, almost unrecognizable from the beaten girl they had abandoned months before. When security finally released them hours later, their flight was gone. Their trip canceled, their priority status revoked pending review. They stood in the terminal, furious and humiliated, with nothing left but their bags. That's when I stepped forward. "Lose something?" I asked, a voice steady, clear. They spun around. My mother's eyes widened first, then narrowed. "You!" My father's jaw clenched. He was about to speak, but I cut him off. "Funny, isn't it? The airport floor. Last time you left me on it, I couldn't breathe, couldn't even close my jaw without crying. And today, look at you. You're the ones grounded." Dad sneered. "What did you do?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "I learned. I watched. I turned every trick you mocked me for the girl who wasn't worth a ticket into the storm that clipped your wings." Ryan stammered, "This isn't fair." I cut him a glare that silenced him. "Fair? You paraded the world while I scraped the floor. You drank champagne while I bled into my own hands. This isn't fair, Ryan. This is balance." My mother tried to muster venom. "You'll regret this." I leaned in, just enough for her to see the steel in my eyes. "No, Mom, you will. Every trip, every flight, every time you flash your cards and expect the world to bow, you'll remember this day, because the next time you step into an airport, you'll wonder if I'm waiting, if I'll pull the floor out again." Their faces drained of color. I didn't scream. I didn't strike. I didn't need to. Their power was gone, stripped not by fists, but by the very stage they had once used to break me. And as I walked away, I heard it not their laughter but silence, heavy, choking silence. The kind that follows after pride is shattered, and the ground no longer feels safe beneath your feet. They gave me the floor. I made sure it was theirs instead. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.